04:20 p.m. Belgorod border. The Russian radar screen goes white first. Not static, not interference, just nothing. Like someone reached into a billion-dollar machine and ripped out its eyes. 30 seconds earlier, this system was hunting Ukrainian F-16 seconds with the confidence of a predator that believed the sky belonged to Moscow. 30 seconds later, it's blind, deaf, and cooking itself from the inside out. If this radar stays alive, Ukraine's airspace becomes a shooting gallery. If it dies, the entire Russian air defense umbrella collapses like wet cardboard. Stay focused, because what happens next is not a missile duel, not a dogfight, and definitely not a fair fight. This is a 4-minute execution built on physics, patience, and Russian arrogance. Inside a reinforced command van, operators are high-fiving as decoys light up their scopes. Emitters are switched on. Power surges through cooling vents, never designed to be targets. Somewhere above the tree line, something the size of a suitcase is already listening. Time remaining, 42 seconds. Margin for error, 0. Russia just turned on a flashlight in a dark room, and Ukraine already knows exactly where to aim. For years, Russian planners sold this system like a legend wrapped in circuit boards. The Nebo-M wasn't just a radar, it was a promise, a multi-band monster designed to sniff out stealth aircraft, to see what America swore couldn't be seen, to hunt F-16 seconds before their pilots even realized they were exposed. Layered around it sat Zoopark 1M counter-battery radar, listening for artillery whispers, while Krasika 4 flooded the air with electronic noise so thick it felt like fog you could choke on. Above them, Book M3 launchers waited with cold confidence, missiles priced like beachfront condos, while Igla-S teams scanned the sky through thermal scopes, fingers tight on triggers, convinced nothing small, slow, or cheap would ever get close. This was supposed to be an electronic fortress, a digital iron dome, the kind of setup that made briefings end with smug smiles and phrases like "air denial achieved." If you were a Russian commander watching this grid light up, you'd feel untouchable. If you were Ukrainian, you'd see something else entirely. Stay with me, because this invincible shield had one fatal addiction. It loved to talk. And every time it spoke, it told Ukraine exactly where it was. Now let's talk money, because this is where the story stops being heroic and starts being humiliating. That Nebo-M radar stack sitting quietly near the Belgorod border wasn't a field toy or a backup sensor. Fully deployed, networked, and powered, it carried a price tag north of $500 million. And that's before you count the protected vehicles, the generators, the hardened shelters, and the specialists flown in to babysit it. This wasn't equipment. This was an investment portfolio. Zoopark 1M added tens of millions more, listening for every Ukrainian gunshot, while Krasika 4 burned fuel and money every minute it screamed into the electromagnetic spectrum. Book M, 3 interceptors stood by at several $1 million per launch, each one ready to be fired at anything that dared blink on a screen. This wasn't defense by efficiency, this was defense by expense. If this system works, Russian commanders get promotions. If it fails, accountants get migraines. Stay focused, because in 4 minutes, Ukraine is about to turn a $500 million confidence boost into the most expensive self-inflicted blackout of the war, using tools that barely add up to a decent suburban garage. And here's the twist Russian planners never priced in. The bill wasn't about to arrive from Kyiv. It was about to come from physics. 4:21 p.m. Same coordinates, same sky, different game. Ukraine doesn't rush the kill, because rushing is what amateurs do when they don't trust the math. Instead, the trap opens quietly, almost politely, with signals that look familiar enough to be ignored and dangerous enough to demand attention. Far from the radar site, an AGM-88 harm wakes up in passive mode, not screaming, not hunting, just listening, soaking in emissions like a patient accountant waiting for the market to expose itself. Stay with me, because most people miss this part. The harm isn't there to strike, it's there to threaten. Its presence alone forces Russian operators to make a choice: go dark and lose the sky, or light up and prove the system works. Predictably, pride wins. Emitters stay on, cooling fans spin harder, power draw spikes, the flashlight stays on in the dark room. Then come the insects. Switchblade 600 seconds drift in from multiple vectors, not charging, not diving, just loitering at the edges of engagement envelopes, hovering where radar beams graze them like fingertips. To an untrained eye, they look like noise. To a Russian screen, they look like a swarm that needs to be swatted before it becomes a headline. Missiles fire. Blitz 3S launch with theatrical confidence, vaporizing targets that cost less than the paint on the interceptor's fins. Operators cheer. High fives crack in the command van. Someone jokes about Western toys being overrated. Each kill feels like proof. Each explosion feels like control. But here is the lethal error. Every shot demands tracking, every track demands a mission, and every emission tightens the noose. But wait, there's another layer. As the swarm keeps circling, one drone isn't behaving like the rest. It isn't testing range. It isn't provoking fire. It's mapping heat, memorizing airflow, learning where the system breathes. The cooling vents glow warmer with every second of sustained operation, turning a classified radar into a thermal roadmap. Time remaining, 96 seconds. Russian defenses are busy winning a fight Ukraine never intended to finish. And the trap, fully armed now, is about to close from the inside. 4:22 p.m., 90 seconds into the engagement, and the mood inside the Russian command van feels almost festive. Screens show clean kills. Switchblade icons wink out one by one. A Buck crew reports another confirmed intercept. The word confirmed stretched long enough to sound like a medal. Someone cracks a joke about Western donors running out of toys. Another slaps a console and says the system's earning its paycheck today. From their perspective, the math looks beautiful. Cheap drones eliminated, airspace secured, radar picture stable. The Nebo-M keeps talking, broadcasting its confidence across the spectrum like a drunk at a bar who thinks everyone needs to hear his life story. Power demand climbs, cooling systems strain, fans scream louder, pushing hot air through vents that were designed for efficiency, not survival. But here's the part only sharp-eyed viewers will catch. While Russia is busy celebrating the scoreboard, Ukraine isn't counting kills, it's counting seconds. Every interceptor fired is a withdrawal from a very expensive bank account. Every sustained emission sharpens the thermal signature, turning classified hardware into a glowing anatomy chart. Victory, in this moment, is actually exposure. Stay focused, because this is where arrogance becomes fatal. Instead of going dark, Russian operators double down, boosting output to prove dominance, to make sure no pilot, real or imagined, slips through their net. It feels like control. It feels like superiority. It feels like winning. But wait, look closer. One small contact hasn't been engaged. It isn't triggering alerts. It isn't worth a missile. It's too slow, too quiet, too irrelevant to matter. That's the mistake. While everyone else is watching fireworks, this drone is slipping closer, riding the warm breath of the radar itself, guided not by GPS, but by the heat of Russian pride. Time remaining, 38 seconds. Celebration is peaking, and the system, still talking, has no idea it's about to cook itself alive. 4:23 p.m. This is the moment Russian doctrine never prepared for, because it doesn't look like an attack. There's no launch flash, no sonic boom, no warning tone screaming for attention. What finally commits to the kill is small, slow, and insultingly unimpressive. A drone no larger than a suitcase, drifting on the edge of perception while a $500 million radar complex keeps shouting into the void. Stay with me, because this is where modern warfare stops being loud and starts being cruel. The drone doesn't rush, it doesn't dive. It follows heat the way a bloodhound follows scent, riding the turbulent plume pouring out of overworked cooling vents, vents that were never armored because no one imagined they'd ever be targeted. The Nebo-M is working hard, flexing its range, proving its worth, and in doing so, it's painting a glowing arrow that says, "Enter here." Inside the command van, nothing feels wrong. Screens are still alive, emissions are strong, confidence is high. Buck crews are reloading. IGLA teams keep scanning empty sky, bored now, convinced the danger has passed. This is the blind spot Ukraine paid for with patience. Time remaining, 22 seconds. The drone slips lower, hugging terrain, invisible to systems tuned to hunt jets, not insects. Krasuka 4 screams louder, flooding the spectrum, accidentally masking the one thing it should fear most. At this range, jamming doesn't matter. Physics doesn't care about doctrine. 10 seconds. The drone reaches the vent, not the radar face, not the antenna, the lungs. A shaped charge ignites inches from intake blades spinning at thousands of RPM. Superheated metal fragments are sucked inward, not blown out, dragged deep into circuitry worth more than most fighter jets. fire doesn't spread, it multiplies. 5 seconds. Inside the radar housing, temperatures spike beyond design limits. Power surges cascade through buses and boards never meant to see this kind of thermal shock. Connectors melt, silicon delaminates. Control software freezes mid-process, blind and confused, logging errors that no human will ever read. There is no dramatic explosion, no mushroom cloud, just the quiet, irreversible sound of a system eating itself alive. The Nebo-M goes dark. Zoo Park follows seconds later, its feeds collapsing without context or explanation. Operators stare at black screens waiting for something to come back online, not yet realizing that nothing ever will. The sky over Belgorod doesn't belong to Russia anymore, and nobody fired a big missile to make it happen. What killed this system wasn't luck. It was thermodynamics with a grudge. The shaped charge didn't need to punch through armor or shatter antennas, because the real vulnerability was already exposed by Russian confidence. When superheated fragments were pulled inward by the intake flow, they didn't behave like shrapnel. They behaved like seeds. Each fragment ignited secondary failures. Each failure cascaded into the next, and the entire radar stack became a closed-loop oven. Stay focused, because this is where physics humiliates procurement brochures. Airflow meant for cooling accelerated combustion. Power buses fed heat instead of bleeding it off. Copper traces acted like fuses with no breakers, vaporizing in sequence, while processors clocked their final cycles faster and faster, right up until timing errors tore logic apart. This wasn't a blast. It was a chain reaction. Time since impact, 8 seconds. Inside the housing, temperatures crossed thresholds engineers never test for, because they assume those conditions can't happen without external penetration. Insulation turned into fuel. Protective coatings bubbled, then peeled, exposing layers never meant to meet oxygen. The radar didn't lose signal, it lost coherence. Data stopped making sense before it stopped existing. And here's the detail most people miss. Even if you replace the antennas, even if you swap boards and reroute cables, the system is still dead. Thermal shock warped frames by millimeters, just enough to break alignment forever. Calibration is impossible. Trust is gone. This is why billion-dollar radars fear internal kills more than missiles. Time since impact, 22 seconds. In the command van, alarms finally arrive. Too late and too vague to help. Operators see error codes cascade faster than they can read them. Someone reaches for a reset, another for a phone. Neither matters. The machine has already decided. What you're watching isn't destruction. It's disassembly by physics. And Russia just paid $500 million to learn that heat always wins. Now step back, because this is where the war stops being cinematic and becomes brutally mathematical. Ukraine didn't spend hundreds of millions. It didn't roll in a wonder weapon or gamble a pilot's life. What it spent barely registers on a Pentagon spreadsheet. A handful of decoy emissions, several loitering drones priced like used cars, one small finisher designed to listen more than it explodes. Call it tens of thousands. Be generous and push it into low six figures if you want to feel charitable. Now flip the ledger. A Nebo-M radar complex functionally erased. Roughly $500 million gone. Not damaged, not degraded, but written off. Zoo Park 1M blinded alongside it. Buck M, 3 interceptors burned chasing ghosts. Each launch a multi-million-dollar receipt fired into the sky. Krasuka, 4 screaming uselessly while doing the one thing modern warfare punishes hardest, emitting. Add the downtime, the relocation costs, the specialist teams, the operational pause. This wasn't a loss, it was an invoice. Stay with me, because this is the part that really hurts. Russia didn't lose this system to superior firepower. It lost it to discipline, to patience, to a country that understood the return on investment better than the one bragging about budget size. For the price of a suburban garage, Ukraine bought a blind spot hundreds of miles wide. And here's the strategic checkmate. Every Russian radar crew watching this footage learns the wrong lesson. If they go dark, they lose awareness. If they light up, they invite death. If you emit, you die isn't a slogan, it's a rule now. The modern battlefield is dark, quiet, and unforgiving. So here's the question for you. If you're the commander on that border tomorrow, do you trust your billion-dollar machines, or do you start fearing every empty patch of sky? Because Russia just turned on a flashlight, and Ukraine proved it only takes one smart shadow to end the night.